And it's lights out. Welcome to the PITWALL Podcast, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. Joining me this evening is my dad, Dr. David Kessler, Itsy Bitsy, and I'm your host, Jeanmark. What an opportunity for us to prepare for the Spanish Grand Prix. So let's go. Amazing how well you guys are doing a part of the pit crew community. Average large league scores. That means we have a league with at least 50 or more teams in it. For the entire season, our very first one race challenge for Bahrain, that means we only can submit one team. That means there's 167 unique teams. Leads the globe in the largest average, 1,013.1 points. You guys are amazing. Let's see how that continues to hold up, which now brings us to how the one race challenge or how our leagues did at Miami. 4 out of the top 5 spots were coming from our leagues. Now, my personal theory is that it's the same people who are joining each ORC. So if you have a really good team, you probably continue to have a good team. But you guys can choose different teams. So good work to be able to have our Saudi Arabia, our Imola, Australia, and our Miami ORCs win it. Especially because the ORC for this race was the top scoring ORC, period. So congratulations, you rose to the occasion. Largest scoring average league for Miami was our Miami One Race Challenge. Dad, how do you react to all those mega drivers everyone was using in our ORC?
Yeah, it was cool as far as seeing the numbers. As far as being on the podium, it doesn't affect that, but it is cool to see us at the highest average, 255.2.
And so good on you guys. Great community. Do you realize, Dad, that we did not have ORCs last season until you missed the first race? This whole coolness of having one race challenges was all because of a mistake. This is kind of a promo ahead of time. Don't miss out. Be a part of our one race challenges. Be a part of our leagues. Links are in the description below. Have fun and enjoy it. I'd like to share with you the results of the last race. Part of the reason why we didn't share them on our live cast is because there were some post-race penalty investigations that were outstanding. And Alonso got a 5-second penalty for causing a collision and then got a 5-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. And as you can see, that dropped him outside of the top 10. Therefore, he only got 5 points. Magnussen got 5 seconds for causing a collision. He still was able to get 2 points, but that did impact his results, as well as Ricciardo, who also got 5 seconds for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. All 3 of these drivers were impacted in various ways, but as you can see on the left, those in red had the largest losses of positions. Of course, Gasly, Norris both DNF'd. Russell gained 7 positions, and then the bottom 3 all gained tons of positions. Albon 9, Latifi 5, and then Ocon, who couldn't even participate in the qualifying because of a crack in his chassis, started from the back of the grid and still gained 12 positions. He did an alternative strategy that paid off when the safety car came out. So we see Ocon as that steady sleeper throughout the season.
Yep, very good.
Our highest scorers, 56 points for Verstappen, 50 for Leclerc. And this is the big reason why it's hard to convince me to put Verstappen on the team. Because if you look over at Red Bull scored 69 points. So if Red Bull and Verstappen cost pretty much the same amount and Red Bull scoring more points, then it's probably better to have Red Bull. And Ferrari scores 56 points and Leclerc scores 50. So they're very similar. Whereas Mercedes scores 40 and Russell scores 36. So when you have a driver that's scoring almost as many points as the constructor, you're like, oh wow, that's a really powerful driver. But if they're just as expensive as the constructor, then you have to go with the constructor. I know that we're going to talk about this when we get to our lineups, because you are debating about this whole Red Bull, Verstappen lineups. Any preview you have for that?
The person who scored top in our league had Verstappen Mega Drive. You know, there is value but you have to plan when you use it.
Indeed, especially when you're lining up streaks. And we'll get to that here in the future. Let's check out these standings. Magnussen, still the top 10, even though he hasn't had the consistency like we're liking from his Miami performance. Ocon, with his great recovery strategy, 24 points, right behind Bottas, Norris, Hamilton, all in the 30s. We have Sainz and Russell in the 50s. We have Perez by himself in the 60s. Verstappen, 85 points, going closer and closer to Leclerc, 104. Dad, how do you feel? It seems like if Verstappen didn't have those 2 DNFs at the beginning of the season, this championship wouldn't even be really a contention, right? Do you think that the Red Bulls are just overpowered with Verstappen at the helm?
I think Verstappen's style of driving bodes well for him to repeat as a champion. He was able to get by Leclerc. I know the setup, they had a better setup for long straights, and Red Bull had more power. So even though DRS was available, Leclerc couldn't pass him on the long straights. It will be interesting, though, when they switch to tracks that have less of a long straight and see whether or not the strategy still works as well. So I think it's going to be a good battle throughout the season.
You bring up a good point because we see that Sainz could keep Perez behind. So there's something about how Verstappen was setting up his car or driving style that was allowing him to gain enough time to then get in slipstream. And then once you're in slipstream, to pass. And then we see here when we kick over to the team standings, Red Bull is but 6 points behind Ferrari. And so they are ever closer clawing to that championship lead. Now, it's very important to remember that Ferrari is the number 1 fantasy team pick because of how much cheaper it is than Red Bull when it comes to constructors. But also recognize that Ferrari has not had any upgrades brought this season. You've got all the other teams that brought these large packages, and Ferrari over here is saying, no, we're trying to figure out stability. Their engine isn't even put to max because they don't want to have to blow through their engines. Just put that in perspective. We have all these other teams that have already used their 3rd allotted component, which means they're going to start taking grid drop penalties. And so if Ferrari is able to extend it, Ferrari is able to bring up an upgrade package, that means they're no longer draggy and they're able to now have that power down the straight. They could bring the fight back to Red Bull. Like you're saying, Dad, if Red Bull has that power down the straight and Ferrari can fix it, then Red Bull can't just blow past. And that's what we saw last season. We saw that the Mercedes had a much better engine, and so their aerodynamics allowed them to just go down the straights at a faster and more powerful. And so Red Bull, being a little bit more draggy and higher rake, had to keep lowering his wing more and more and more just so Verstappen could try to cut that deficit against Hamilton. And he made it work with his driving style, but we could see something similar happening to Leclerc, right? They could start adjusting his wing or his setups to try to reduce drag, and then he could get closer and closer. Do you think that Ferrari still has that hidden power? Or do you think that that's just down the setups and they can just get the right setup and moving forward, they probably don't need to have that huge major upgrade?
I think if we're just talking about who's going to win the constructors this year, I think it really is depending on the second drivers. I think Leclerc and Verstappen are going to be first and second pretty much any race, except DNFing of Verstappen. But it doesn't seem like he has that liability issue now that he had before. So I think it's going to be Perez and Sainz that are going to help determine who's going to be the number 1 constructor this year. I was a little surprised that Mercedes is that far ahead of McLaren. I shouldn't be surprised, but I didn't realize that Mercedes is way ahead of the other midfielders.
Well, that's because Mercedes has been finishing in the top 10 pretty regularly. Like, they may not have been qualifying as strong, but they've been able to outpace the other cars. Whereas McLaren has cars out of the points, they have cars crashing. The Mercedes, with the exception of when Hamilton finished outside the points, they've been scoring. And so that's probably why they are the clear number 3. That's kind of like the no man's land Ferrari was in last year. They were clearly the number 3 car. They really had only 2 chances to win a race last season. They didn't make them stick. And the same thing might happen with Mercedes. Hamilton has a record, a stat, that he has won a race in every single season he has participated in. This is why people claim that his car has just been OP, because he never had to race with a car that could not win. And so this season might be a little difficult for Mercedes because they're still trying to figure out their package. But I would not be surprised that if they could figure it out, that they could start winning races this season. It might be too far of a deficit to catch the other 2 teams in the constructors. But with how Russell and Hamilton drove at Miami, I would not be surprised that if you just give them a little bit more time shaving on their lap times, they will be right up there. I saw a reaction. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think Russell is driving better than Hamilton in this similar car right now. I think it's going to be tough for Hamilton actually to win a race.
Because you say if they improve the car, Russell will probably be the one to win it.
Yeah. unless Russell makes a mistake and Verstappen and Leclerc makes a mistake. Going to be tough for Hamilton. Now, this last race, Russell was on a different strategy for his tires and was fortunate by the yellow flag. So maybe Hamilton is driving better. Maybe his car is more responsive. And this race was just up to strategy and luck with the yellow flag.
Well, that's happened every race this season, pretty much. If there's been a safety car, Hamilton's got the negative side of it. And so he probably would be a lot better off in his points if, like you said, the strategy had been going his way. But we heard that on the radio, Russell was purposely saying, leave me out, leave me out, leave me out, and it paid out. And so Hamilton, because he's not as comfortable with the car, do you remember over the radio, they were asking him, do you want to do this? He says, you tell me, I don't want to be making that decision. That is completely different compared to last year. Last year, when Hamilton was in the lead and Hamilton was in control of the race, he often would say, hey, I want to stay out. I want to go longer. I want to pit now. And so it goes to show that his confidence really shifted as it pertains to that car. And that's what I said in our season preview. I did not think Hamilton was going to beat Russell over the course of the season with a brand new package, which requires a different driving style. And like you've pointed out, we've seen that firsthand. Russell is just got a better feel for this type of car, problems and all.
Time for a prediction. Do you think that by next year, Mercedes will be close in a three-way battle? Now that they have the car, they're figuring it out. Do you think they're going to make strides for next year?
Yes, because the regulations are designed for that to happen. So at the midway point of this season, whichever team order we have will then decide your wind tunnel time. So Ferrari, who was third last season, will now be first. So they'll have the fewest amount of wind tunnel time. And so, yeah, I think the whole system is designed. Next year, hopefully we'll have 3. But I think by the time we get 2024, we should be having 5 teams fighting for podiums every single race. Here's the thing. I've been looking over the last 3 races. 8 of the 10 teams have had a driver in the top 10. In the past, we would only, if we're lucky, have 6 or 7 because you would always have your bottom 3 teams and the 6 of them would always be just here. The fact that we can have teams in the midfield actually be fighting for points routinely shows that these regulations are working. Yes, of course, Williams only has 3 points, but they're scoring points. Haas went pretty much 2 seasons scoreless, and I'm glad immediately that they have 15. Right? So it goes to show that it's been going a long way. Actually, this is an aside. I think Haas is so thankful that Magnussen was there. I know that Schumacher could have got points and Vettel could have gotten points. They had the crash that knocked them both out of the points, which is unfortunate. But all these points have come from Magnussen. And I don't think Mazepin would have been scoring these points. It is a little bit of your research and development, but also having a seasoned veteran driver.
So to me, a parallel to Hamilton in his new car is Gasly in his new car. Gasly was really pretty dominating last year for midfielder, and this year he's not doing so hot.
That is a very valid point. He was around 5th or 6th qualifying position last year, and here we've got him scraping at the back. That's a good point. Okay. Prediction time. How many years will Red Bull keep Perez around?
I think they'll do similar to what Mercedes did. When they see a driver that is coming up that they think is going to help the constructors better than Perez, they'll probably give them a chance, especially if they win the championship and Verstappen if he wins back-to-back. I think they would be more likely to bring up another driver, train them in, whereas Perez is an established one, and he's going to help them win the constructor. If Verstappen is dominating, then will they bring in someone to learn under him? Similar to when they brought Verstappen in with Ricciardo.
Yeah, but they were winning championships, and I think you bring up something that's very valuable. The reason they kept Bottas around for 5 years is because they were winning. The season Hamilton doesn't win kind of coincides with Bottas being kicked out for Russell. Of course, they won the Constructors, but they shouldn't have. In all honesty, they should not have won the Constructors. Bottas did bowling for Red Bulls 2 races in a row that ruined them. History shows that when you have a championship-winning driver, you don't want inter-team fighting. This is like Schumacher with Barrichello, Hamilton with Bottas. So,
Rosberg?
No. Hamilton and Rosberg fought. This is why they brought in Bottas. They wanted a quiet number 2 so that the other guy could win. Like you said, the whole point of a championship for the constructors is who the number 2 driver is. So Hamilton was clearly winning the drivers. Bottas was clearly winning the constructors. Bottas says that when he came to Alfa Romeo, he actually was able to lead the team. He was able to give input on the development and bring the team around him, whereas that was never afforded to him to Mercedes. Same thing with Rubens Barrichello when he was at Ferrari with Schumacher. Michael Schumacher, it was his team. He was winning the drivers, and Rubens was just there for the constructor. So I could see them saying the same thing for Perez. Perez is just good enough. Almost on the podium, and if not on the podium, he's fourth. And so if he's able to be consistent, why would you want to bring in a young guy that could then fight Verstappen? If they lose the constructors this year because of Perez starting to make mistakes, I could see that being an issue. So you say that it all depends on a young guy, so that means you don't think Gasly or Albon will ever make it back, or even Tsunoda, or make it to Red Bull?
I was thinking that Gasly might have a chance, but he's not showing this year what he did last year, so I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. And this is the end of his contract, so another team is going to snatch him up, I'm pretty sure. Like you said, Red Bull will if they're winning the constructor with Perez.
We have to realize that they upgraded Toro Rosso, the AlphaTauri, and started calling it the sister team, not a B team. Gasly may not like it, but they're clearly trying to make him the leader of the team. And if he can't prove to be a leader of the team, why would they ever put him in Red Bull? I think that's probably why they're keeping him there. And as like you said, if he keeps the results, it should be good. Put in the comments below, how long do you think Red Bull would keep Perez around? Do you think that Albon or Gasly or even Tsunoda have a shot, or is it just going to be this Verstappen-Perez until Verstappen and Perez can't win championships anymore? It'll be interesting to have that discussion. A news item. Monaco builds their track. It's a street circuit. And then they do a lot of historic races leading up to the F1 race that's at the end of May. Big news item was that Leclerc, driving the 1974 Ferrari F1 car, raced by Niki Lauda, and I believe that was the year that he won the championship with that car. That's why it's special. He's going around the track. He's got the GoPro strapped to the side. He's starting to push it. The commentators are saying, oh, he's starting to push it to see how it's going. And then suddenly in Ras Kass, which is the final corners section, he loses the rear end, smashes it into the barrier, and now everyone's talking about the Monaco Curse. Now, Dad, when you watched the video, what were your thoughts of the crash?
It happened so quickly. I mean, it just went out from behind him and he slammed it in the back into the wall. And so I thought to myself, well, either this historic race is going to give him input so he does better next time, or he's repeating his history of crashing at Monaco.
They believe it was like a brake disc failure. They zoomed in on the picture. It looks like it broke right before he got to that corner, which is why suddenly it slipped out. Here's the big issue is that drivers are only allowed a certain amount of practice on tracks outside of the F1 official practice sessions. And one of the rules that stipulates is the car has to at least be 2 years old. Well, this is a 1974 car. So yeah, that's not a problem for him. Also, Monaco hasn't historically changed that much over the years, right? So that's not much of a problem. He also lives on that as his hometown. So, it's not like he's going to gain extra feeling because he's driving this really old car around Monaco. But Dad, you and I were both commenting about how small those cars are compared to what we might call the limousines driving around with modern Formula One.
When I first looked at it, it looked like a Matchbox car going around compared to what they're driving now. It's like, it's just them with a little something around them, a little coating of something, and an engine behind them.
Well, so that's the thing I was thinking about, right? So Leclerc has that crash, okay? Now it's historic. He's just doing some laps. Guys aren't trying to go full speed. But imagine if that wasn't the nature of the circuit, where it's a short, small braking zones where you're not going max. Imagine if he was in 1974 car, right, on one of these circuits where you're coming into a high-speed corner, you hit the brakes, and then you spin out, right? That guy had a nice little barrier to catch. Imagine if he went onto some gravel pit, the thing starts spinning or hitting something, right? There's a reason why the cars have become heavier and bigger because of safety. And that would have also been sad if someone like Leclerc had a really horrendous crash. Like you said, it just looked like him with a little bit of sheet metal surrounding him. So F1 has gone with big strides in trying to improve the safety of their cars.
I'm sure glad he's safe because, I'm relying on my fantasy Beyond that, I want all drivers to be safe. So
True. So back in the late 90s, Michael Schumacher broke his leg midway through the season, and he missed a bunch of races. So it would have been crazy to have something similar happen, right? We haven't really had that in modern F1 since probably the latest person to have something big like that happen would be Robert Kubica. He had a huge rally car accident that messed him up. But like you said, if he was on our fantasy team, got a huge injury, he's out for weeks and weeks. You're like, no! Pretty much everyone would just have Verstappen at that point.
Right.
Back to the Monaco Curse. Leclerc hasn't finished an F2 race at Monaco. He was in it for 2 seasons. 2018, he doesn't finish the race in an Alfa Romeo. 2019, he doesn't finish the race in a Ferrari. 2020, because of COVID, was gone. 2021, he comes back, he puts it on pole, but then crashes in qualifying. Some people felt like that was controversial. They didn't understand or catch the gearbox issue. So the front right of the car hit the barrier, sent a shockwave to the back left. When the race formation lap began, he broke, could not continue. So in history, even to 2022 with that little car, he wasn't racing, he was just doing show laps. He has not been able to finish an F1 distance race in any sort of vehicle. So how do you feel about this Monaco Curse? You and I probably aren't superstitious, but why do you think there seems to be this issue that Leclerc is getting on this one particular track, his home circuit?
there seems to be more pressure on your home circuit because the people are really wanting you to do well. And I think in the past, he's pushed it just a little more than his car could handle. I'm hoping that with his seeming to mature and have a better insight on this new car this year, that it's going to end and he's going to finish second.
Oh, you don't think he's going to win Monaco?
Well, I wouldn't bet against Verstappen.
Well, but let's look at the facts. Red Bull has better top-end speed. Well, that's not a thing on Monaco. Ferrari has more downforce. That's a good thing at Monaco. Ferrari has better cornering than Red Bull. That's a thing at Monaco. I think that Red Bull builds their cars for particular tracks, specifically their home circuits. We see the same thing for Ferrari. And Ferrari, because it's getting design input from Leclerc, is wanting a car where he can win at Monaco. I'm not surprised that the car is built for his home Grand Prix. And like you said, if it's safer so he doesn't have to push the car to its limits, hopefully he's able to do really well and put it on pole this time and keep it. Now, here's the last thing I would say about this. You mentioned about pushing the car, and that's what the commentator said he was doing with the 1974 car, wasn't he? He started going a little faster, he was starting to find the edges of the car, and that's when something broke, which put him in the wall. And so maybe Leclerc needs to not be doing that when he gets to his home Grand Prix, because it seems to keep backfiring.
I mean, the recent race, he was trying to get past Perez and went too far on those sausage curves and then ended up dropping even further. He seems to make mistakes when he's having to push to catch up. He seems to do better once he's ahead and just has to plot and stay ahead.
Well, so that's the thing. His mistake at Imola hopefully will inform what happens, but I think that's across the board. Any driver who starts having to push is going to make mistakes. This is why, please no one get upset at us in the comments, but this is one of the reasons why Hamilton has been repeatedly critiqued as it's the car, not the driver. Because when you're out in front, you can manage the tires. When you're out front, you're not being pressured by anyone. When you're out front by over 30 seconds a race, there's no reason to ever push your car. And since you're not pushing your car, you're not stressing your car, which means your car engine and all the parts can last even longer while other people are having to get grid drops. You're cruising the victory. And so we're seeing now Hamilton, he isn't necessarily making major mistakes and crashing the car, but with a car that's not as powerful, you're seeing him having some strategy mistakes. And this was something that was really plaguing Ferrari in 2017 through probably 2020 even. Ferrari just were not making good strategy decisions because they were trying to counter what Mercedes was doing. And so we see a similar thing happening with Hamilton. So yeah, I think, it's easy then for Leclerc to say, okay, I'm on first position. No one can really pass me on track in Monaco except they do a better inlet-out lap. So hopefully he won't be trying to push it. But that's what caused him to crash last year. He was P1. Whether people think he crashed on purpose or not, he was trying to push the car to get that extra tenth or two out of it, and that's what put it in the wall. So I know everyone everyone, this is Spain this next race. This has nothing to do with it, but there's only one race week between Spain and Monaco, and also the news would be a little bit older, so we want to talk about it now. Let's do our last comments, Dad. Because the third sector of Spain is the closest to Monaco, I wouldn't be surprised if Leclerc is really strong in the third sector. But like we saw at Miami, just because you're good at one sector doesn't mean you're faster than the other car who's better than you in two sectors. So how do you see the Red Bulls stack up versus the Ferraris since we'll be coming to Spain here?
I think it's going to be the same thing we saw in Miami. They're going to be pretty close. They're going to be having their own sectors that are better than. It's going to come down to the decision and how well they start the race. First qualifying, but how well they get off the line. Like last time, Verstappen was behind Sainz and Leclerc and was able to get past Sainz by getting a good start. So I think it's going to be very similar. We'll see how they qualify and then see the strategy. And that's one thing I really like is seeing the strategy. Last year, I liked watching Red Bull's strategy of undercuts and stuff to try to get ahead of Mercedes. So if they get behind again, then you'll start seeing that strategy again in this coming race.
That's a good point. We see the Ferraris are usually having a faster pit stop than Red Bull this season. Red Bull started clawing that back, but it seems that whatever they could have gained in the pits isn't quite enough because Red Bull's just so much faster on track. We recognize that Spain, Catalonia, Barcelona, this is where the pre-testing, not the official testing that happened in Bahrain, but pre-testing. So they have a lot of data, and it's where they've been having preseason testing for the last number of years. And so there's so much data that the teams know. And this is why they often consider it one of the more boring races. And so if Ferrari are able to make a few adjustments so they're not as draggy, I could see, like you said, Dad, it would come down to who gets the right pit stop strategy. Do recognize that Ferrari hasn't brought any major upgrades like the other teams. And so I would not be surprised that when the time comes for Ferrari to bring those upgrades, that we're going to have a lot of parity now between the two teams. I cannot imagine Ferrari allowing their draggy car to go up against Red Bull when they get to Monza. That's their home race. So they're going to have to bring some sort of package before that to iron out this issue that they're having in straight line speed deficit, or they will just be embarrassed. So that's our preview for Spain, and we'll have to stay tuned for our 3 statistical secrets. It's now time for our one race challenge. The best lineup that you could have had with 100 million or less in your budget is what we call the ORC Elite. Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Albon, Latifi, and Ferrari. So, we keep coming back to, do you want Verstappen and Leclerc on your team at the same time? Well, that's what the ORC Elite thinks, and that would have net a bunch of points.
Well, that's what the team who got first place had on their team. Verstappen, Red Bull, and Leclerc.
True. And that is a nice segue. If you can beat the ORC Elite, you get a nice little highlight on our leaderboard. So the ORC Elite scored 260 points, and our gold got 262 points. Let's kick it over to our Miami one race challenge. Congratulations to our top scorer, Amon C. 375 points. He used the Mega Driver on Verstappen. He used the Turbo Driver on Leclerc. He had Red Bull as his constructor. And this is fascinating because not only did he get the top score, he also, with the base score, because we don't factor in Mega Drivers into our one race challenge, he got 262 base points. That is our gold position. Congratulations, Amon. We're going to be hearing the Indian National Anthem. Because of the craziness of everyone using Mega Drivers and us having to do our calculations, I want to give shout outs to everyone who did really good. You can see them here on the screen. But let's now go down to our silvers and our base points. This is going to go all the way down to rank 35. And this is our good friend Paola. Hers is listed as USA, but she should change her flag to Chile. I have to remind her about that. She scored 255 points. Turboing Leclerc, but had Russell and Albon. Man, it looks like Albon is actually a pretty good pick moving forward. I might have to consider switching out. But the problem is if you pick up Albon, can you fit him with a Red Bull lineup? We didn't see Amon do that, but he also had a slightly different lineup. But anyways, congratulations, Paola. And then Keskor. Oh, interesting. So they were listed at 255 points, but right now they're listed at 256 points. So maybe after post-race penalties? No, because I did it after post-race penalties. I don't know. I'll have to see why PlayOn has that discrepancy there. Keskor also from Germany. Woot woot. This now brings us to our silvers with 250 points. Jason P. Oh, he used his Mega Driver. Okay, well, there you go. You get a little shout out, Jason P. But the ones who did not use the Mega Driver or use their base points, we had from the UK, Oluwatobi, who had Ocon, and Guillermo S. from Uruguay. And he was able to have Verstappen, Leclerc, and Perez. And then had Magnussen and Schumacher. His team value is 105.6. So maybe he has a slightly larger value than I do. And that's why he was able to have all three of those guys on the team. But that's the problem about that supporting cast. Schumacher, Magnussen only scoring 10 points when you could have a Red Bull that's scoring more than 10 points in Ferrari. Congratulations to all you in getting the gold, silver, and bronze. Funny story, Amon actually reached out to me on Discord and said, hey, what was wrong with my score? I thought I got a gold. So apparently I was so confused about all the Mega Drivers and stuff, I accidentally halved the turbo driver he gave to Leclerc. So thank you for Amon for catching that, and shout out to all of you for doing great. As he pointed out, it is so hard to get on that ORC leaderboard because all of you cool people are joining in. Any comments, Dad, for our podium placers before we kick it over to the leaderboard?
Oh, I'm just happy to see so many people enjoying it. It'd always be nice to be on there, but at least Paola represented us, so that's great.
Well, like you said, Dad, she'll do it first. You do it second. So now you're up for a silver. Here is the link in the description below for our spreadsheet. You go to the ORC tab, and we have, like I said, highlighted whenever someone outperforms the ORC Elite. Amon, you are elite this race. And then we have our 2 silvers, and we have our 2 bronze. And our Fat Stacks Award goes to Guillermo because you had the largest team value while tying someone else. And then now let's bring us over to our updated values. An average of 233 points for bronze, 236 for silver, 252 for gold. And they are doing better and better, which now brings us to our ORC leaderboard with Paola's silver. She's now into the top 10. Keskor with his second silver got into 9th position. Oluwatobi is now tied for 5th. Amon is now tied for 3rd. Look at all that amazing movement that you guys are doing in the top 10. Kim still sits at the top with 51 points. Okay, Dad. Yeah, it's only a few races, but how you feeling? Things starting to shake up at the top?
I'm excited that there's more diversity, and we're only 5 races in, and we have looks like a good 8 people should hopefully be able to get over 100 points this year.
Dad is still shooting for the 100 points club, and it's going to get harder and harder as the season progresses. You remember back in the first or second race, we were like, man, everyone's just going to be tying everyone. As you can see here, race 1 and race 2, we had all these golds, and now it has really shook up. We get 1 or 2 people maximum on each podium position. So how do you feel, Dad? Is it good that we were able to have those wild card opportunities and having the budget changes?
Yeah, I think it does add dimension and more thought to their teams, and so more variety. And I'm excited to see how it goes this year. And it'd be nice if one of us 4 could get on the podium at least every other race, or 2 or 3 or 4. It'd be great to be on there also.
It would be nice for me to get on there, but anyways. Congratulations, everyone. I'm glad we're having some great pit wall participation from you guys, the pit crew, but from us, the big 4. Because like you said, Dad, with how competitive it is, it's great when one of us can make it, along you amazing people. It's now time for our Meme Team Award. Back by popular demand. I'm so thankful when you guys reach out to me and says, yes, I changed the name of my team because I wanted to be on that meme team. 95th out of 97 positions. Bridger E. No, Mikey, no. I know it looks like he's really at the bottom, but he reached out to me on Twitter, and I have to share the story. How did he end up with 1 point from McLaren? Yikes. So here is his story. He commented on Twitter. He says, well, if you see this in time, I would love your feedback. I fell in love with Perez, Leclerc, Russell, Norris, and Bottas with the lesser constructor McLaren. I know better, so it's unfortunate, but I'm 90% sure I need to toss Norris for Alonso and pick up Ferrari. -10 penalty, though. Help me. And of course, because of the timing and on Saturdays not being able to be available, we weren't able to connect. But he did say, my other option would be to drop Norris for Schumacher, picking up Red Bull, but that's two Haas drivers, even though they posted well. Sentiments are ticking up on everyone, and I hold right now, so I will wait for the 2-minute clock to transfer if I do. Struggling with the -10 hit, McLaren looks iffy. And then I said, sorry, I didn't see this in time. My Saturdays are busy away from the internet. Let me know which lineup you ended up going with. Smiley face. He says, all good, man. Word to the wise, don't play the clock, trying to snag a last-minute 0.1 million and misclick on your lineup change while the clock bleeds to 0. I got stuck with McLaren with a free sub and 4.6 million left over. That, at a minimum, could have been used to swap Magnussen for Bottas. And so he named his team, no, Mikey, no, because of the meme. No, it's not right. Dad, you've dealt with this, especially last season, right? We had to hook you up so that you could get your lineup how you needed it to be. Share a story of the craziness that happens for your lineups.
So sometimes I'm not where my computer is when I need to finish my lineup or finalize it. I wasn't able to do it. And so if you go to the Formula One app, if you go to the 3 buttons, you can go down to fantasy. And last year I couldn't do it because I had them on 2 different emails. And so this year I lined up my emails so they're both on iCloud. Last year, it was on my wife's email for some reason, because I guess she had signed up under my other one. Anyways, so this year I was able to get my emails both for my Formula One TV and my fantasy. So it was much better, and now I'm mobile and can change my lineup.
Mobile, and you got it in your pocket. So yes, thanks for sharing your stories, everyone. We love reading them. And yes, that is the craziness of fantasy and live sports and those little hiccups that we sometimes get. Our hearts go out to you, Bridger. I'd like to promote to you now our season-long league. Over 1,100 teams in this league, and this is where we can compare and learn and grow together. Since you can submit up to 3 teams, then you can see how everyone's doing as an average. Let's look at our top one in the world with a 1,232 points, Jimmy W, USA. Used his Mega Driver this last race weekend. He Mega Drive Leclerc, good option. He had Russell, he turboed Perez, he had Bottas, Magnussen, and Ferrari. And that was 317 points, and he only has a budget of 103.6 million. So congrats, Jimmy, and doing great work at the top of our season-long league.
Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive.
Now on to our one race challenge for Spain. Code will be in the description as well as on the screen. You can only submit 1 team here. And so as Dad has found out, you want to be careful that the team that you are submitting is the one that you want to keep on that one race challenge, because for whatever reason, we can't seem to change it. But your one race, your one team, your one opportunity to see how you compare to those across the world. As you can see, we already have 10 people. And so we have the custom graphic. But if we can at least get 50 people, we can be submitted to the large leagues, those that have over 50 entrants. And congratulations, as you saw at the beginning of this podcast, our one race challenges have been doing phenomenal this season. I actually was just reading through the Discord. Aman, who got the top score in our one race challenge for Miami, was tied. He and one other person in the world had that many points scored last race. So congratulations, and this is the place where you can see how you do. If you are one of the top 3 scorers, you will get a special podium ceremony at the end of our Fantasy Formula One podcast. Now recognize we take base points, so we don't calculate the Mega Driver, but that means that you can still use that team for whatever league you're in, and we want to keep it fair for our entrants, so it's not just whoever uses the Mega Driver will win this week. So join, be a part of our one race challenge, and get your name immortalized on our ORC Leaderboard on our Google spreadsheet.
Sounds good. Maybe I should join.
Yeah, I had to tell Dad, Paola, and Dominick, don't forget to join. Don't want to miss out. Now for our PITWALL lineups. The last week has had a lot of activity with 2 individuals. We have Albon, who's been steadily ticking up, and Red Bull, because of the power streak also ticking up. Okay, Dad, let's look at your lineup. Share with us what you got and your thoughts and moving into this next race.
Well, I was proactive with getting Red Bull as soon as the last race was done. I figured with the qualifying race streak or the power streak that people would come on board. I'm glad he did that. I was a little slower with Albon, so I didn't get as much for him before he started going up. So that's as far as points. I'm probably not going to keep Norris on my team for this race. I'll probably switch him out. I haven't decided yet. Bottas is already on my team, but I might get Russell. As far as that
you've got
team.
the salary cap space to switch from Norris to Russell.
Well, let's see. 20.1, Russell's 24, so I'd have to take out 2 people to do that. 20.1.
You've got 2 subs left, so it would be up to how you wanted to juggle that. It seemed like a solid choice.
I could add signs, per se. I had noticed one thing, that there's no one who's lined up for power streak coming up in all the drivers. Quali and the other aren't lined up, except Lewis Hamilton. He's at 1 on each, but there's no one who's kind of lined up who's getting it. Bottas has 2 and 3, so his are 1 off. Lance Stroll is 1 off. Just seems kind of interesting on that case.
Reliability has been key. The only guy really lined up for power streaks is Leclerc, and he just had his.
Which I didn't mind at all because he's on my team.
Right.
Because I did that, my value's up to like 107.4 million.
Yeah. The one asset we didn't mention was Perez. I think we had been debating, Dad, about 2-week strategy of eventually getting Verstappen on the team.
Yeah.
And because Perez has a race streak, he's good enough to keep.
Yeah, he went up by 0.3 million, and that's probably what's also helped me get above 107 million.
Correct. And so he's not as glamorous as Albon or Red Bull in shooting up, but that is sizable chunk when you're wanting a driver who's not only a points pick, but also a price pick.
If I had gotten on the Albon earlier, I would have gotten 0.3 million more because I jumped on late, and he's already gained 0.4 million.
Yeah, so like a foreshadowing for my team won just across 107 million. My team won 106. And like you said, you're already 0.4 more than me because I think you had gotten on an asset before I did 2 races ago. And so if you got Albon a little bit sooner, then you could be at 108 probably.
So my second experiment was Alfa Romeo, or the lower constructor with more drivers. It is at 105.5 million, which is pretty much as high as I got last year, not understanding day trading and stuff. But when I get done, I'm thinking about actually getting Verstappen on this team. I have 2 substitutions. I'd take Norris off and probably Sainz and probably get, let me see. Take Norris and Sainz off. I might be able to get Verstappen. I guess I could have just swapped out and get Sainz.
So that's the thing. Even though Sainz went down 0.1 million, which would hurt, it's not worth enough to drop him from your team. As we see from this last race, a driver who's on the podium, who's less than 18 million, pretty much consider him on your team because of the cap space differential.
I guess I have to decide on this one team whether or not to stay with Alex Albon after finish getting his points or switching him off for Bottas. Who would you trust more on this coming race?
Well, since you're this coming race, I can't tell you anything because I don't have any free practice session 1 or 2, do we? I will read to you a comment made on the Discord. Let me pull that up. By GRP, I gave him the analyst role because he's got these good graphics that he posts showing what the best team that you could draft with each different price point. So Williams is slow as all get out, and there is their big strength. Doing some analysis on this to update the model, I think over 5 races, there's like a 20 DNFs, which averages 4 per race. If you start at the bottom and jump 4 places, that's 8 points. Because you get plus 2 points for every position gain. On top of that, there's a 5-point Albon has in the bag over Latifi. Plus 2 for just not crashing out equals 15 points. Discounting him by 20% accident rate, it's still 12 points. If Magnussen starts from 11th to 13th, it's quite hard to make points, right? Because you're not going to be gaining positions. And since Mick is real competition, most cars in front of him are objectively faster, less chance to gain positions by the misfortunes of others, and a lot to lose if he drops behind. It may sound counterintuitive, but I think settling for the slower car may be the way to go from a risk-reward perspective. Thanks to Playnos, it's a joke. Instead of saying play on, he's calling it Playno. because they really haven't been doing the best when it comes to the website sort of thing. Thanks to Plano's genius scoring system, of course. So pretty much he's saying do what you would do in the last year with Schumacher. Schumacher, he was the slowest team with Haas, but that means he wasn't getting wrecks with anybody, and he wasn't suffering from losing points to his teammate because he often outqualified him and finished the race above. Albon might be more expensive than Magnussen by about $1.5 million, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much they cost. It matters how many points they're hauling in. And if you think about it, if he's scoring more than 1.5 points PPR, right, then he's going to be better than Magnussen. And then, while I was going to stick with Magnussen because of how cheap he was, because I want to get Verstappen eventually, seeing that Magnussen's value wasn't going up, it would make more sense to have Albon, right? You pick up Albon, he raises by like $1 million, and boom, now you've got cap space when you do eventually want to settle out to someone else. But you also have substitutions. I don't have any more, so I have to run him for my team this week.
It is interesting, though. Magnussen is still at 10.98 points per million, and Albon is 7.82 points per million.
Okay, that's true. But that's because he had a really good 2 races. So if it shows that in free practice session 1 and 2 that he's got a really powerful car, but this last race, if this is what's going to happen moving forward, you don't want him on his team, right? Losing so many positions over a race, you can't sustain that over the course of a season. Don't forget that also his really good first race was because you had 2 Red Bulls that DNF. So that's an extra 4 points right there.
Yeah, and Mick Schumacher seems to be driving a little better now. So it should be interesting.
This now brings me to my 2 teams. They're identical. I really thought I was going to get 2 different teams. I could not pass up Red Bull going up and Albon going up. So Team 2 eventually just followed what I was doing for Team 1, both benefiting with almost $1 million increase just off those 2 trades. And like I hinted at earlier, I've already used my 3 substitutions for both teams. And so I got to run these lineups. Barring accident, I think these are really solid picks, right? Leclerc, 1 or 2. Sainz, podium. Perez, either 4th or podium. Bottas, he's been doing good. Albon, because of what we just outlined, he's still a solid option, especially if you're getting so much value out of him. And then Red Bull up for a power streak. So yes, they're much more expensive than Ferrari, but get that power streak, and then you could see if Ferrari's gaining, and then you could jump, right? Jump between Red Bull and Ferrari until you get enough money to then put Verstappen on your team. So put in the comments below or reach out to us on Twitter or the Discord. I am busy with work and stuff, so I'm thankful to all the people on Discord that have been able to help each other out or in the comments of these YouTube videos. So thank you for the community because we can't do it alone. I'd like to share with you a YouTube comment from our last podcast video from Glenn Grant. He says, terrific discussion and fantasy update. I was too chicken to use my Mega Driver this week with the new track and all the red flags in the free practice, and then none at all during the race, go figure. I plan on waiting until either A, Leclerc's next qualifying race streak, which if all goes well will be at the British Grand Prix, and by the way, I'm going to be there on the Sunday for the race. Woot woot! B, the sprint race in Austria, where we can assume Max will be epic, or C, Max's next race streak. I reckon that A or B will gain the most points. I just can't get my head around the sum for A and B because there's too many variables. If or when Max finishes the race, it's in first place. So does using Mega Max in the sprint race give more points than Mega Charles at Silverstone? If we assume he'll finish in second place, then there's the inherent unpredictability of sprint weekends that you've spoken about before on the channel. Love to hear your thoughts. Okay, Dad, let's break this down. Let's try to simplify it, okay?
Sure.
If you weren't going to use your Mega Driver, was there a different time that you would use it and why?
I have to go with Max because the team that I have played on the ORC, the One Race Challenge, if I use Leclerc for my Mega Driver, then I have to use like Perez or Sainz for my Turbo. So for me, I'm going to go when Max has his race streak, and then I will Turbo Leclerc at that time.
Would you rather Mega Driver Max when he's got a plus 10 for the race streak, or Mega Drive Max at a sprint race?
That's a good point, because with a sprint race, you can get more because he doesn't have a power streak, if I'm thinking correctly.
Correct.
So I'd probably, if they're not lining up, and I don't think they will in this half, I'd probably go with it next time he's on the sprint race.
The sprint race can give you a max of 16 points, but you have to get first in qualifying. You have to win the sprint race. You have to get fastest lap. So it averages usually plus 13 points if you're not getting fastest lap and all that other stuff. So you could say plus 13 versus plus 10. But which one is easier to happen? Finishing the race in the top 10 is theoretically easier to happen than trying to win everything. Why are you smiling, Dad?
Because last year I megged him with sprint racing, and he qualified well in the sprint race, and they get punted by Hamilton, didn't finish the other two races. That sprint race does add variability, so it would be safer to go with the race streak.
Yeah, it'd probably be like it's a swing of 9 points if you think about it, right? So your Mega Driver multiplies whatever it is by 3. So if you get 10 points, that becomes 30. If it's 13, then it becomes 39. It's just a 9-point difference. And so you would say how much risk is inherently involved. The one benefit of doing a Mega Drive during the sprint race is if that there's any problems, the sprint race usually saves you. That's what happened to us in the past year as well as this season. If you make a driver, if they get negative points, it triples those negative points. Well, if you're going to DNF during the race, then whatever points you scored during qualifying and the sprint race keep you positive at least. And that's why I was fortunate that when I decided to Mega Drive Leclerc at Imola and I had to turbo Sainz didn't give me negative points because of his performance during the quali and the sprint race. It kept him in the positive. It wasn't a lot of points, but it's better than going negative, right? I guess to answer Glenn from my perspective, I would just say that it's tricky. How do you get both drivers on your team? If you can day trade to the point where you could have both on your team and have a good supporting cast, then waiting as long as possible is actually a better strategy because you're day trading in between. If you don't have the ability to day trade, then you might be getting more points with having Verstappen and Leclerc, but you're perhaps leaving other points on the table because of the other drivers you have to put as supporting cast or the constructor you have to pick up. Dad, you showed that Alfa Romeo on that Omega team that you had, but as you've realized, and I realized last season, having a weak constructor is not a smart thing to do. The amount of points that you just leave on the table is so great. The thing I would say looking at your situation is just try the day trade, and if you can gain, what's the Dad for you, 3 million? You need to gain 3 million more before you can have Verstappen, Ferrari, and Leclerc on the same team, right?
I'm not sure about Ferrari. I was talking about that with Red Bull, and Red Bull is more expensive.
Oh, you're only 3 million away to having Red Bull, Verstappen, and Leclerc?
Yeah.
Wow. If that's the case, then yeah, definitely wait and try the day trade, because if you could be able to have Verstappen, Leclerc, and decide if you want Ferrari or Red Bull, whichever week seems like one is stronger than the other, then that gives you a lot of flexibility to try to get max points.
I was thinking, I picked up Red Bull specifically for their power streak. Ferrari's not a bad option, and if I can pick up Verstappen with Ferrari in the future, the constructors, Red Bull and Ferrari, are very close in how many points they're scoring right now.
And here's the cool thing. Because of around a 19% trade-out rate for Ferrari, or maybe I had that backwards. I think it was 19% trade-in for Red Bull and I think it was like a 22% trade-out for Ferrari. And here we have Red Bull that went up by 0.5 million, okay? So Red Bull went up by 500,000 because of the power streak, which means that either people are going to stick with Red Bull or they're going to trade back to Ferrari, which means that if you jump between Red Bull and Ferrari is what I call a juggle. If you juggle between Red Bull and Ferrari, you might be able to gain 1 million just off the juggle. Because I can't imagine people with the price point that Red Bull has staying with Red Bull after the power streak is over, especially if Ferrari is lining up for power streaks. And so that might be the strategy. Juggle between the two until you have enough to get Verstappen, Leclerc, and them. What are you going to say, Dad?
I agree. When is the next time that Ferrari would be qualified? 3 races? Or
let's look.
So Ferrari has a quali streak right now, and then they're 1 into the race streak, so they're not going to get a power streak.
Yeah, so there may not be as huge of a juggle back. 51% of all teams still have Ferrari. So that's crazy if you think about it. How Red Bull has gone up by 500,000, and they still only have 17%. So I still think that the juggle might be real. Or what you might have had is teams that were using the alternative constructors and those weren't panning out. Those are the ones that mainly are switching over the Red Bull. I don't have the stats in front of me. But yeah, put in the comments below. If you haven't used your Mega Driver, how long are you going to wait till you use it? And when do you think you're going to use it? And it'll be fascinating because that'll make the difference in your teams.
Yeah, so just put this in perspective. If I go with Ferrari next after this race and I change out Norris, I can have Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Alex Albon, and Bottas on the team.
Oh, that's a solid lineup. That's a solid lineup because you're pretty much guaranteed a race win with Leclerc and Verstappen.
So that's what I'm thinking about doing after I gather the race and quality streak, because I'm guessing that Red Bull will not continue to go up after this race.
No, but I think they will continue to go up before this race because
absolutely.
All your casuals are going to start watching free practice session 1 and 2. They'll be like, oh, Red Bull's on for a streak. Let me keep picking them up. That's solid.
I'm still looking to increase on that leaderboard.
I'm looking to try to get on the leaderboard. My microphone and everything's just adjusted because I'm very furious. If you know why OBS changes your default microphone setting, I'm not talking about in the setting, I'm talking about like in the audio mixer. From time to time, it'll change off my microphone that I always use to default, which is picking up nothing. It is the most ridiculous thing that I had, and that means that all of League DRD and all of Game Center I cannot use because none of my microphone gets picked up. I'm very upset. Very upset. Very, very upset. And so you'll just have to deal with not having that this time. Dad had an idea. He says, why not try to save some of the footage? So we're just going to tell you what happened. So for League DRD, we had us paired up. Dad and I in the Kings race. Dad, you just whooped me. Congratulations. Dominick and Paola in the match of Lords. And Paola beat Dominick. So that means now Paola get promoted to the match of Kings with Dad this next race. And then I and Dominick will be in match of Lords. Of course, there's still the Kings race and the court race. But Paola is proving her strategy to be effective. That we were focused on the preseason. And actually that saved us because having a lower seeding from the preseason means that she got to have the keeper pick over you, Dad. Because if I remember correctly, she got to keep Verstappen, right?
Actually, I think she kept Sainz because she knew Verstappen would only give me one more race.
That's true. And because she did that, I was able to learn from her strategy. And against Dominick, what I then did is I opened it up so that I could have both Verstappen and Sainz. That way I could have benefit of Verstappen, but then keep Sainz around for my keeper for the following week. Because my goal is hopefully to beat Dominick in the Kings race, and I used a turbo on him. Dad, you used a turbo in your Kings race as well. We both potentially... No, you didn't, right, Dad? Or did you?
I did, because I want to make sure get as many Kings wins. And so I'm not guaranteed after this one. Now, Paola, of course, didn't turbo, so I might have survived without turboing. We'll see.
So you and I both used turbos in the Kings race because I want to get to the Kings race. And then Verstappen will probably get above 21 points average, which will mean he's no longer a keeper, which means that I would then have a strength against whoever wins the Kings race, right? Because if you win it, you don't have Sainz. I would have Sainz. And if Paola wins it, she doesn't have as many credits as I do. But I have less points than she does, so I could keep Sainz and she couldn't.
Right, and that's why I also did a turbo now, is because I didn't think I had a good keeper that would keep me in the Kings race after this one. So I'm putting my eggs in one basket, knowing that this is probably the one last race I might win, and then after that, I'm probably going to go back to the race of the Lords and have to build up my credits or something.
True. Well, this is something Dominick pointed out to us, is that a credit spent in the match of Kings is worth 2. Normally, you only get 1 point from that, but if you wins the Kings race in the match of Kings, that means that you win it twice in a row or 3 times or however many times in a row. It's like King of the Hill bonus. You get 2 automatically. So we'll see how that plays out. And then let's move on to what maybe we can salvage for Game Center.
Okay, so Game Center, we did blind ambition. Basically, what I was doing is asking, in this case, a name of a driver, position, and time in seconds. So, Jeanmark, we'll let you go first. What did you pick?
Well, before we get there, I had to step out to use the restroom, and Dad explained blind ambition to Dominick and Paola. I get back, and no one decided to fill me in that these were supposed to be predictions for the race and not just funny Mad Libs. If you've ever played the game called Mad Lib, you just get some blanks, you fill some things in, and then you have a fun time or whatever it says. Dad was saying that there's points handed out by how close you get to the prediction. What? So I put in Latifi for the memes. I said 30 seconds in P2, which translates at Latifi will finish P2 ahead of Albon by more than 30 seconds. While Dominick was saying almost the exact same thing, except he said Latifi 15 seconds and 14th. So no matter what happens, he's probably going to get the points over me. And then you have got Paola, who does the most sensible thing. It says Hamilton 3.9 seconds over Russell and finishes 4th. So I missed that crucial detail. And like I said, we'll insert some funny clips. You probably won't hear me, but you could see my reaction and Dominick being able to heckle me about it. We'll see if we can put that in right now.
Okay,
I'll go first. I'm ready to step up and let this damage happen. Okay, y'all ready? Latifi will finish 14th place ahead of Albon by more than 15 seconds. I did not pick well. I will do better than him. I am going to at least come in second place. There's no way somehow I'm doing worse than that. Second place, baby! Second place!
Okay, Paula, it's your turn.
Now look at Paola making sensible choices over here.
Hamilton will finish ahead of Russell in 4th by more than 3.9 seconds.
That is an actual legitimate thing that could freaking happen.
So do you know what you get if you actually win this?
No, what do you get?
You get to pick the next one.
What do you mean
You
the
get
next?
to-
You get to.
There's
So
four,
Dad,
there's 4 categories, and there's 10 questions in each category. So the person who wins, it's like Jeopardy. They get to pick the category and question in the categories. It's not like we're going points per se, but the closest one gets
Bragging
the privilege
rights.
of picking the next one.
I see.
Yeah, let's see. I have 10 times 4, so I already have 40 scenarios put in.
Yeah, don't sleep on him, chat. Dad stays up and thinks of all these questions. Dominick was like, "Are you going to run out of Game Center ideas?" And Dad's like, "Nope. I will only get more difficult." So, Dad, you've got good ideas cooking and brewing. And there we have it. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's so great to be able to have these discussions, have fun, and prepare for the next race. And until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall.